Neighbors from every corner of District 7, we have the largest geographic area serving over 63,000 residents, and I'm really blessed and honored to be your council member. And so tonight, it is our budget town hall. And this is an important night for those of you who are here, for those of you who are joining us online. Tonight, we're going to hear a lot about where we are in the budget process. I am joined tonight by some incredible people that have been supporting us, and I want to first thank Nick DeHasia, our CEO of the Oakland Zoo. Wave your hand. Christine, TownHall, they provided the space and the delicious refreshments that we have. I want to also thank our city budget team. We are joined by our budget administrator, Bradley Johnson, and ECAT is right there in the back. She's on the budget team as well. And I want to thank my team, Team D7, Jocelyn, Araya, Haley. If you haven't met them personally as we come through COVID, I hope that you'll get to know them and the roles that they lead on our team. And we also have one of our labor leaders here. We've got Felipe, who is our SEIU 10-to-1 leader here. He's also a District 7 resident, so he helps to champion our workers and the support within our labor coalition. And so I just want to thank you for being here as a representative for our amazing city workers and the work that they lead. So tonight we're going to hear more about the budget process. We are going to have a presentation from Bradley where Bradley will give us an overview of the mayor's proposed biennial budget for 2023 through 2025. This is a 2-year budget that we're looking at. He will discuss the process. He will discuss how we came into this $4.1 billion budget, and he will also speak to something that's very impactful to us, a historic deficit of over $360 million. The city of Oakland has never been faced with a deficit and had that type of impact for us to have to address in our budget through our general purpose fund. And so Bradley will share more about that and what that means for residents across the city, and certainly for us as we look to prioritize how we can ensure that there's an equitable amount of resources and response that we can see delivering for us here in East Oakland and in District 7. And so I won't talk for long because you all have heard me coming into this process about how important tonight is. And I just want to thank you for your presence of support. This is a process that is going to take all of us. And anything that we identify in this budget that we believe that we want to see approved differently through this process, that's going to mean that there's going to be some adjustments somewhere else. And so as we think about our public safety priorities, as we think about our housing priorities, as we think about our just keeping up a culture of cleanliness with the illegal dumping and blight issues that we hear, as we think about the impact on our businesses and our workers, everything that we want to see, there will have to be a shift somewhere. And the person that I go to understand where that shift can happen is Reid. Now, it doesn't mean that it's an easy process. And so he's sharing what the mayor proposed in her May budget proposal. The Council President Nikki Bass, she has established a team with 3 other council members, Councilmember Fife, Councilmember Jenkins, and Councilmember Kaplan. They will then take a look at the mayor's proposed budget that will be highlighted today, and they will consider proposals to the mayor's budget. Any amendments or adjustments, any reductions, additions, her team will make that proposal for all the council members to review. There are 4 of us, council members, who are not on the council president's budget team. Myself, Councilmember Janani Ramachandran, who is hosting her budget town hall today, Councilmember Noel Gallo, and Council President Pro Tem Dan Call. All of us will have an opportunity to consider the mayor's proposed budget, to consider the council president's proposed adjustments or amendments, and then work to negotiate our own. And so we can do that collectively, we can do that independently, and that process is underway right now. We have to have an approved budget, to balance an approved budget by June 30th. And so we will have a meeting collectively as council members on May 30th. So today is important for you to come, to get educated, to get more aware, to understand this process, to engage with us deeply, and then to show up as we go into that May 30th discussion with our council colleagues. It will take 5 council votes for any adjustments or amendments to be made. I am 1 vote. And so there's always opportunity for us to engage other council members to hear, to support, and to join us, but we're looking to see adjustments, amendments, or our own proposals as we move through this process. So I'll let Bradley go ahead and move forward, and I will share our budget priorities as I've heard from you and where we see ourselves aligned with the work that the mayor has done and her team has done. It's a lot of work that they have put into this, and I just want to thank them for that work. I want to say that as I consider the priorities that I heard from you in our budget memo that we submitted last month, or March 15th, that the mayor has a number of areas that are certainly generally aligned with ours. We have yet to get through the details of that to understand how that implementation and execution with our workers will meet us out here in District 7, but I do want to share that there are a number of areas that we're aligned, and then there are some areas that are still opportunities for us to look at how we can make some proposed amendments. So let's join this process. Stay engaged. If you have questions, don't hesitate when that time comes to raise your hand. We are live streaming this, and so if you're okay being live streamed, your questions will be live streamed and shared publicly as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reid. I want to thank Nick. I want to thank the Oakland Zoo for hosting us. I want to thank all of you, District 7 community, for coming out. My name is Brad Johnson. I'm the city's budget administrator. As a personal note, I grew up just up the road here. My parents still live in District 7, so it's good to do the first town hall of this session back home as it were for me. I also want to acknowledge the budget staff on my team and staff throughout the city with whom we could not actually produce any sort of budget or any sort of proposal. Over the past 3 months, my team, department directors, mayor's office, city administrator's office have worked together to creatively bridge the gap in the proposed budget you're about to see. And we'll move over here and advance slides over here. So before I get into the details on this proposed budget, let's do some key background information on the city's budget and budgeting process. The city operates on a fiscal year that begins on July 1st and ends on June 30th. So when we talk about years, when we say 23, 24, 24, 25, we're talking about the July it starts and the June it ends. So we do not operate on a calendar year basis, it's a fiscal year basis. The city does a biennial budget process. Every odd number year, we do a 2-year proposal looking forward. And in the second year, we just the second year prior to its beginning. So we're in that biennial, what we call a big budget. The second year is normally called a baby budget. So we're in a big budget year where we're addressing things for 2 years in a row. The city mayor must propose and the council must adopt a plan to balance that 2-year process. The outcome that we have to accomplish in this process is a balanced budget. You may have heard about the federal government having conversations right now about whether or not it will or will not pay its debts, and those debts have accumulated because the federal government can run deficits. We as local governments cannot. We must balance our resources. Any expenditure must be met with revenues coming in. The mayor and council are responsible for resolving any of those deficits in the current year. First, the mayor has to propose a balanced budget, and by the 30th of June, the city council will have to adopt a balanced budget. Important context, the mayor and council in this cycle are facing the largest deficit numerically in the history of the city of Oakland. It is larger than the Great Recession, and I did a little bit of historical research. It's actually larger than Prop 13, which was the next largest actually in terms of context. It's the largest deficit in history. And so, by definition, they are forced to make difficult, hard choices in that process. This presentation covers a lot of the contents of the mayor's proposed budget at a high level, and I hope to keep your attention as we walk through that. Some context just before we start. The City of Oakland is one of many local governments that provide services to Oaklanders. We are not the only local government, nor are we the only recipient of Oakland taxpayers' resources. The city is partners with the school district, with AC Transit, with BART, with East Bay Mud, Station Regional Parks, provide services across a spectrum to Oaklanders, and of course with Alameda County. Many critical services, things like public schools, public transit, courts, social services, anti-poverty programs, are the responsibilities primarily of other units of government. So, as an example, If you have an issue with your child's school, that is not Councilman Reid's responsibility to deal with, that is your school board representative's responsibility to deal with. This is an important thing to note. The City of Oakland is not, again, the only local government entity, nor the only recipient of local taxes. Speaking of those taxes, they are the largest source of the city's revenue. Just under 2/3 of the city's revenue come from taxes. And the idea that being taxes is a real key thing. Taxes come in a number of flavors and categories. Everyone's probably most familiar with property tax. We also have real estate transfer tax, business license taxes, hotel taxes, etc. There's a really important thing to understand about taxes, though, specifically in the California context. Local governments cannot raise the level of taxation without a vote of the electorate. We cannot raise taxes without going to the voters in an election, which means in the short term, local government bodies, in this case the City Council, cannot use tax increases as a mechanism to balance a budget. Effectively, in the short term, their hands are tied, mayor and council's hands are tied as it regards to the revenue side of the ledger, by and large. Some flexibility, but by and large, in terms of our biggest categories, they have to operate within whatever the economy is generated based on our current tax rates. They can come to you at an election with propositions to raise revenue, but they cannot do that in the short term. Expenditures. The other side of the ledger, obviously, is not just what we take in, but how we use our resources. And this is a breakdown of how that looks by category. The most important resource, the thing we spend the most on in the City of Oakland, are our people. People, personnel, overhead expenditures are more than half of the city's budget, and that surprises some. Those are the people who deliver services to our residents. Those are people in our libraries or youth programs, maintaining our sewers, filling our potholes, providing police and fire 911 response, etc. We spend a significant portions of our budget, though, also on things like operations and maintenance. Those are things like supplies, materials, and whatnot. We also do capital, debt, etc. But again, people is the key thing to keep in your mind. So when we're talking about a budget, by and large, we're talking about expenditures, and I've hopefully painted a picture right now. The mayor and council having their hands tied on the revenue side, we're talking primarily around people. Let's go through the process a little bit and we'll kind of get there. Our private process to develop a budget actually started way back in September, but our public process kicked off in February. The council was given results of a community poll done Oakland-wide of all residents of the city, scientifically sampled to make it representative of what the priorities are for the next cycle. Maybe you got that call, maybe you didn't. We called about, I think, just over 1,000 residents in the scientific poll. The council had a retreat in March to develop its collective priorities and submitted individual priorities to the mayor. In April, we presented our 5-year forecast that presented the scale of our deficit and put it in a medium-term context. And then on May 1st, the mayor released her proposed budget, delivering it to council in a presentation on May 3rd. We're now in the step there in May where we're doing these committee forums. This is our first night of them. There will be 7 in each of the council districts. By the 30th of June, the council will have to adopt the budget in order for our fiscal year to start in July. Let's talk a little bit about that deficit. As I mentioned at our outset, we're facing the largest deficit, more than $360 million over the course of 2 years in our city's history. It's twice as large on an annual basis as we faced in the Great Recession. That's the magnitude we're talking about. Shortfall is largely a result of 2 factors. Loss of federal pandemic funding, which supported us over the course of, through the sort of 2.5 years of the pandemic, coming through to end this year, and changes to the economy. Some of those are due to new factors. Our current interest rate environment of having higher interest rates is slowing our housing market. Housing, the real estate market, is probably the primary driver of city revenues in terms of those taxes. The other are new normal factors, things like our hotel taxes. We have seen, while we've seen people come back to leisure travel, business travel basically doesn't exist anymore. With the onset of Zoom, and Oakland was a big convention town prior to the pandemic. Addressing a deficit of this scale means the mayor and the council are going to be forced to confront super difficult trade-offs. There's no way to go through this, given our limitations, without some reduction to city services. It's inevitable. The space we're in is our elected officials are responsible for deciding how to best balance those in order to deliver as much as possible while preserving services for our most vulnerable. We go through budgeting based on principles, and I'll note through three of them key ones here. As a part of this budget process, we center the topic of equity. That means we want to make sure that the most vulnerable in our community do not have disproportionate impacts from any reductions in services. Second, we have to value our workforce. I mentioned staff are a key component of our city's budget. They're also our most valuable resource. Long-term, seasoned staff are critical in ensuring that city residents get services on the tail end. Without those staff, we cannot actually deliver our charge. Third, we want to think strategically and innovatively. We have to think outside the boxes that traditionally exist in the city. Candidly, we have to try new things. And in a space where you're confronted with heavy reductions, creativity is a critical thing. The mayor's key objectives in this process, again, mirroring this. Smart fiscal planning, leveraging our creativity and community, both our city staff and city leadership, and working in close partnership with the council, listening to the council's priorities. Today, because of this process, I am presenting to you a budget that does balance and bridge that $360 million plus gap. It draws on the insights, experiences, and wisdom of city staff across multiple departments, and it focuses on providing valuable services to our most vulnerable. Let's talk about some of the key initiatives and changes in this budget. One key item is to develop more efficient and effective government. A key thing that this budget will do is consolidate several departments. Specifically, and I'm pulling out three key ones on the screen. Our homelessness services function will be combined in our community housing development department to unify our efforts to deliver services in both the housing and homelessness and the full spectrum between. We'll be merging our human services department, what remains and think that provides services to our youth and to our seniors, with our parks and recreation department to a new Department of Children, Youth, and Families to better align and consolidate services. We'll again lastly combine our Department of Economic and Workforce Development, our Planning and Building Department, to streamline our planning and building delivery processes so that economic development is at the core of when we do our land use planning throughout the city. And in the process of doing this, we will save $2 million annually through these consolidations. The mayor has developed, for the purposes of ensuring that we have proper management at the city administrator level, this idea of dividing up the city into what we're calling channels. 4 different areas of responsibility that will each have a dedicated person at the deputy or assistant level in the city administrator office to ensure they're delivered. Someone that works up every day, not just supervising departments, but ensuring that the interdepartmental spaces are aligned between them. There's 4 channels, and they're the way I'm going to prevent services here are community safety, infrastructure and economic growth, community services, and our internal services. Again, there will be a deputy or assistant city administrator looking to coordinate across each of these channels to ensure gaps are not there. Again, to put that org chart back on another piece of paper here, here you can see the city's departments with the new department alignment listed across those channels. So again, in the community safety channel, you'll have things like police, fire, violence prevention. Internal services would be things like finance, where my office sits, human resources, the city clerk's office, information technology. Infrastructure will include our new planning, building, and development department, public works, and DOT. Community services will be children, youth, and families, housing and homelessness, our libraries, and our animal services departments. Let's talk about how we close this gap. There are 4 key things that we use to close the deficit. 1, we froze vacant positions primarily in our general purpose fund. These are positions that are not filled and not occupied. One of the key priorities of the mayor, aligned with that, as I mentioned earlier, was valuing our workforce. This budget does not contain layoffs to city staff. If anything, the mayor's objective is to focus on being able to more effectively and efficiently hire positions. We allow for attrition in some key places instead of, again, engaging in layoffs to achieve savings. Where eligible, we've transferred costs to other funding sources where we have eligibility. One of the key things I always describe when I'm talking about municipal finances is that in the public sector, money doesn't have just one color. In the private sector, it's green. You can use $1 to buy just about whatever you like. But in public finances, we have these things called funds. And so it's not green money, it's blue money, or pink money, or magenta money, burnt umber money, aquamarine money. There's hundreds of different flavors of money across the city of Oakland. And each one of those flavors can only be used for its own purpose, right? I can't use a blue dollar for a red purpose. And so where we had eligibility and we had resources somewhere else, we looked to transfer eligible services to ensure that we had the least reduction services in a short time. These are a responsible approach to eliminating the deficit over the next 2 years. It lets us avoid immediate large services cuts, layoffs, or other government closures. I will say that it is a short-term bridge solution. These sort of budget balancing measures will not necessarily work in the long term, but they avoid immediate reductions and more severe reductions to services. The budget, as I mentioned, will allow us to invest in some other things. Because of the generosity of Oaklanders, we have resources, many of which are earmarked for specific things. Many of those sources do not have deficits. I mentioned we might have an excess of orange money even though we lack enough blue money, if that makes sense. And so despite that, there are significant investments in affordable housing, early childhood education, infrastructure. Again, these are not things funding generally out of our general purpose fund or other challenged resource pools. Let's talk about some key highlights. Community services. Over the next 2 years, there's over $200 million of investment in affordable housing. This is the largest investment in affordable housing that the city has actually ever done. It is largely a result of the passage of Measure U last November. That law and measure gave us the capacity to, again, make an unprecedented investment in affordable housing. Again, earmarked money cannot be used to bridge something else. Similarly, the passage of Measure AA allows us to do significant expansion in early childhood education across the city. The budget allocates over $110 million to services to our homeless residents and neighbors to try to provide new shelters, housing options, sanitation options across the city. A lot of those resources are actually pass-throughs from the state and federal governments. I mentioned the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families, which will again allow us to better focus in on at-risk youth. And the budget preserves access to things like town camp and our recreation programs. There's no significant reduction to the recreation programs that serve Oakland youth after school and over the summer. Moving on to the next topic of community safety. The budget over the course of the 2 years of the budget, there will be 6 police academies, which is the same pace we've been on over the prior years. We expect, while we're reducing some police positions, we actually, which are vacant right now, we actually expect to have a higher number of officers by the end of this 2-year budget than we have currently operating now. So we've done some alignment around that to align our number of positions and number of roles to this estimate of 6 academy rate. And we actually think over the course of this next few years, we'll actually have a higher number of actual officers on the street. It maintains the investment that we've made in macro, which is an alternative resource to policing to address things like mental health crises and responding to crises related to homelessness in the community. So instead of having a police officer respond, macro personnel are able to respond, provide targeted services to someone who is a trained mental health professional to deal with the crisis, and that officer is then freed up to deal with a different community need or resource, potentially running down a violent crime instead. The proposed budget does delay the rollout of one fire engine and browns out an additional fire engine on a rotating basis across the city. So the proposed budget does take One proposed engine that's not operating right now stops it from coming online and takes one operating fire engine offline. It'll be the brownout will be rotated across the city in a way that minimizes impact at certain times of the year. Again, you wouldn't want to brown out a fire engine, for instance, in the hills during the summer months at a higher fire time. That is an operational decision that OFD will make on a month-to-month, week-by-week basis to see where that happens in order to minimize its impact. We have maintained our baseline investment in the Department of Violence Prevention, and the mayor's office is engaged in an audit of our ceasefire and violence prevention strategies to ensure we're getting our bang for our buck. On the topic of infrastructure and community and economic growth, budget contains over $215 million over the course of 2 years to upgrade buildings, recreation facilities, libraries, storm drains, non-road infrastructure across the city. These are, again, largely paid for by our bond measures, Measure U, the remaining elements of Measure KK. Again, these bonds that have been passed are really critical to us making these deep capital investments in our facilities, our infrastructure. It also contains over $70 million in road repaving and street resurfacing over the next 2 years. Things like traffic safety projects, repaving roads. If you don't know this, a little bit of a public safety nerdiness for you. When you go and fill a pothole, you don't know this, we just patch it up. Next year, that pothole is likely to be there again. This will especially happen whenever you see that sort of alligator skin on a road base, but it means the road base is filled. You can patch that pothole as many times as you want until we go through and repave it. That road will continue to deteriorate. Capital paving is the really, really critical thing that the city has to do to actually improve road conditions. And again, thanks to Measure U, we're able to make significant investments in that. It's going to take a while. That's still a very significant backlog citywide, but capital investment is actually the long-term strategic way to go on that. And then again, related to internal services. I think many of our community are aware the city faced an IT attack earlier this year. And so this budget does contain $10 million over 2 years to upgrade our IT infrastructure. We're still recovering from the impacts of that cyber attack. It did cripple our ability to operate in a lot of ways due to a lot of ingenuity from our IT department, and across the city, we were able to minimize those impacts, but we cannot, in good conscience, not take the efforts to make ourselves vulnerable again. So there are significant investments made there. We're streamlining it under a single channel will hopefully allow for better and more efficient communication between our internal service departments. It includes a human resources strike team for key vacancies in departments that are largely outside the general fund to fill vacancies in things like planning, public works, transportation, etc. And again, it includes key investments in HR to ensure that HR is reaching out to our local community here in Oakland for filling of our vacant positions across the city. The proposed budget addresses this $360 million fiscal crisis. It is a balanced budget. It plants the seeds and gives us the time and space to develop a longer-term sustainable fiscal plan. This proposed budget is again presented by the mayor and is now in the capable hands of the city council to make further amendments and adjustments to strengthen it. I want to invite everyone over the course of the next month or so to stay engaged and to stay active related to our council meetings. I'm going to briefly pivot then as to how to do that. This is your key website if you want to know anything about the budget process. oaklandca.gov/budget. This will take you to our budget page for the current cycle. To navigate there and show you what that looks like. This is that relevant web page. On it, if you are interested in reviewing the presentation I just did, you scroll down and click Budget Community Forms PowerPoint. You can access the PowerPoint I just walked you through. There are other related informations and links. Again, information's a PDF copy of our budget, which I'll show you in a bit. Presentations made to the City Council, which we'll be making more of. Again, this is your home space for updates, and eventually your adopting budget will be posted here. We are, and we started doing this over the course of the pandemic, have moved our budget book to the to the 21st century. We no longer, although we will be printing hard copies to go out to our libraries, we no longer encourage you to look at the budget book, as a document, as something to read cover to cover. We actually are using an interactive budget website in lieu of that. And this is that web page. Instead of looking at a budget as something that you start with at one place and end with at another place, budgets are more like a Mad Lib. They're designed to be explored and looked at. This is our OpenGov interface for our budget. You navigate this like you would any website. Got a navigation bar at the top that has all the different pages you might want to look at. And on that home page, you have a link to a table of contents. I'll show you from that table of contents a lot of the key items that you'll see. There are messages from the mayor, information about our budget priorities and leadership, facts about the city, guides to this process, detailed information on our revenues and expenditures. Let's open one of those. Open a revenue tables page and let's look at those city taxes across all funds. OpenGov is great, and this might be a little slow. These loads, these incredibly cool interactive graphs that don't just provide data, but allow you to play with them. I mentioned earlier, this is our city revenues by category, by taxes, right? Of taxes and other revenues. This is a pie chart. Pie charts are great. You might want to look at a pie chart for 1 year or for another year, or go back and look at prior years. But maybe you don't want a pie chart. Maybe instead you want a bar chart. Click a button, you can revisualize the data in a different way. It's designed to be played with. There's no way to grade this. Go in, play, explore. All the data in any of these tables is noted below in numeric format in case you're willing to see it. And there's always a call out for our general purpose fund as well for each of these pages. So again, everything across the city, all of our OpenGov pages are designed this way. I mentioned those different categories of funds. Whenever you look through a budget document, you'll see these numbers listed, these 4-code numbers, and you'll say, oh my goodness, what is 1010? Well, you go through these fund listings and look it up. You can click here and note that 1010 is your general purpose fund, and 1020 is your vital services fund, and 1030 is your Measure HH SSBT fund, and you can read about that, how that fund is drive revenues from our sugar sweetened beverage tax and what it can be used for. Every one of those different colors of money we describe on this page, and you can drill in if you're a nerd, which I encourage you to be. Nerd is a good word in the modern era. As a self-proclaimed nerd, I encourage you to indulge in your nerdiness. It gives you the ability to drill in on each of those and understand what each of those jargons means. However, many of you will want to operate maybe more on a high level. Under budget changes, there's a document called Service Impacts, where we break down, based on the council's priorities, all the enhancements, the reductions, the impacts to equity on our communities for all the key changes, and we write it out in a narrative format if that's how you prefer to consume information, as opposed to tables, charts, and graphs. Multiple ways to look at the information. This is a citywide look. Maybe you're only interested in a single department. You can click over on this department page, and we're going to look at finance right now. Every department in the city has at least 2 pages attached to it. On the expenditures tab, you can open it up. This will click for me. And you'll see a mission statement for each department. You'll see the service impacts and write-up that specifically pertain to that department. All the significant, individualized line item changes that can post that. There are hundreds of these, so it's all here. Information on that department by fund, and again, this is a bar chart, but again, maybe I want a pie chart. For those of you who like social media, by the way, every single one of these charts can be immediately exported and shared to Facebook, Twitter, or emailed out, or made pictures of, directly from the application if you log in. If you want to tweet about something you think interesting from a chart, no need to screenshot it, it's right there for you. On the second page of each one of these departments, because context is everything, there's information on the background that tells you more about what a department does. I'm using finance because that's my department here. We know the external and internal services that we provide, so you can know what does finance do in the city of Oakland. You might be surprised to know that payroll in the city of Oakland, that top link I'm showing you there, is not in human resources as in many organizations, it's in finance. Here's a key one that everyone gets wrong. If you have a concern about whether or not the lawn is mowed at a local park, or whether or not a tree is maintained, that is not the responsibility of Parks and Recreation, soon to be Children, Youth, and Families. That's the responsibility of Public Works. These breakdowns tell you what department in the city does what. It's a really key way of learning about who does what. And because we're interested in moving forward, we actually have preliminary performance measures across every single department in the city that you can see about how they see their role in terms of providing services. Again, there's a lot of key information here. There's other information about our financial policies, our legislations, backgrounds. If you're a data nerd, again, every single piece of data that drives this website can be exported and played with via our transparency portal. You can download it, you can do your own analysis with it. And in case you have a family member who does not speak English, because we're using a web tool, if you want to see that same document, and you want to see it in Albanian, there you go, click a button. Immediately accessible to everyone in the community. I, again, encourage everyone to sit and explore our city's budget page. You can navigate directly to it from our budget homepage. It's that first green box where it says explore our proposed budget. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Councilmember Reid.
Can you actually share about the difference between the vital service stabilization fund, rainy day fund, and where we are with any money
Absolutely.
in that regards?
That's a great point. The city has actually two different reserves. This is an important thing because we don't do everything once in the city of Oakland. We like to do things multiple times. We have a vital services stabilization fund. There's a better name for that. It's called a rainy day fund. It's designed to be used when it's raining. It's definitely raining right now. We build up its balance in good years. We draw from it in bad years. We're using that to balance the cycle. We also have an emergency reserve. Think about that as your earthquake fund. Your break glass in case of emergency fund. We are not touching that in this cycle. There's always I'm candidly aware, having grown up far from here, that we are not far away from the Hayward Fault. Hope it never happens, but eventually it will. So the city prudently doesn't tap into that resource, except in case of an emergency. But our rainy day fund is designed to be used and is being used in this cycle.
How much is in the rainy day fund?
We had about $12 million in it. It was hit as a result of the pandemic. Coming into the pandemic, we're kind of being, one of the key things about this deficit is we're kind of being double dipped, right? We just had this major slowdown in the economy, and we're in an environment immediately after that where the economic situation hasn't gone back. Normally in a normal recessionary period, you get hit hard, and then the economy comes back on the back end. We're getting hit hard, and then you're kind of being sucker punched while you're down. That's why our deficit is so large.
So we depleted the rainy day fund?
And we built up a little bit right at the tail end of the pandemic. We built it up just a little bit back, and now we're back to using it again over the course of this cycle. Councilman Reid, I would happily turn it back to you. But
I bet you will. Thank you, Brad. Was that helpful? Yeah. I think this budget town hall is really important. A lot of, certainly probably most of what Bradley has shared may be new information or renewed information as we're going into this 2-year cycle. And so I'm happy that he's here to be able to go through and help to educate us going into this process with really what is before us. This is a very tough time. It is difficult. I can only imagine how difficult it is for our neighbors and our workers collectively trying to figure out how do we deliver more with the tax dollars that you give to us? How have you entrusted us to make the best decisions on how we deliver critical and essential services for you every day with the type of outcomes for you to want to live and thrive and stay rooted in Oakland? And I believe that where we are, we're certainly facing some incredibly challenging times. We're living the weight in this district of nearly every disparity, and it has certainly crippled us. Public safety, housing, homelessness, and illegal dumping, and how we're, needing to deliver more for our seniors, our youth, our children. All of those things are very weighty for us. And so as I look at where we are in this budget, I'm like, okay, I've learned how to make a way out of no way all the days of my life. Now, how do we prioritize what we have to ensure that we drive an equity-centered budget to make sure that communities like East Oakland that have long had disinvestment can have the more equitable investment with the stretch resources that we have. In other communities, wherever those inequities or disparities may be the greatest in parts of the city, that we look through that lens of showing how do we drive to deliver in those parts of our community with what we have. And we know that in this part of our city, we need a lot of support. And so I'm looking through this because context is everything. And I would say the most helpful part of the mayor's budget that Brad just spoke to is that service impact. Go through all of those things that he showed you, nerd out on all the technical stuff, call us with questions, create different, maps and graphs that you think we should consider in this process with how you may have found some more money. Because all of those levels of details, the book is this thick for our budget book in print. And it will be available for you at our libraries. I have to go through every fund and every line to find the money that we need to adjust. And so it is a very detailed process. And Bradley, fortunately, is there with me. I'm asking questions about every fund. Where, if we need to make an adjustment, can I find that money? And what funds are not restricted? We have a significant number of restricted funds that we got from the state, federal department, maybe grant related, that we are not able to touch and move. There are ballot measures that you approve that we are not able to use to offset where I might want to shift some money to adjust where we have this deficit. And so trust me, it is a very detailed process that we will be going through. That said, I heard from you along the areas that are priorities for this district: keeping you safe and protected, keeping you housed and housed permanently, keeping our streets clean and beautiful,
Yes.
keeping East Oakland served and prioritized, and keeping our businesses open and working, people in our community working. And so those areas we laid out against the service impact when we got this budget in the first 3 days. And what we saw was that, again, generally, I think that with what we have to work with, it's gonna be tight, but I believe that the mayor heard us in some key areas. She heard us under some areas that dealt with just getting our workers staffed up. We need people actually on the ground to get the work done, and so not laying off our workers was significant. Creating a hiring task force, this vacancy strike force, I believe will help us. We've had 700 vacancies, funded vacancies. We've not been able to get people hired. We've gone from 54 steps to 32 steps, and there's too many steps to get people hired. People like those out here in East Oakland, where we have some of the highest unemployment rates, want a great job at the city with good benefits. And so I can appreciate that one of the mayor's priorities is to have this hiring blitz for departments like Public Works, the Department of Transportation, planning and building, and getting those bodies brought in so that we can get some more people on the ground to actually show up getting the work done for you. Infrastructure, potholes. We did a survey from our District 7 residents, and we heard from you that your priorities were crime and violence. Of those who completed the survey, more than 70% said crime and violence is the #1 issue for us in District 7. Followed by illegal dumping and blight. Followed by potholes and paving. Followed by just mental health, healthcare crisis. And while that's covered from the county, there has to be a deeper partnership and collaboration with the county. And then 5th was homelessness. And we know that that is really impactful for those who are unhoused, as they are for those in our community who are working to address that crisis around us. And so I wanted to just share some areas before I hear from you, where I want to tell you that I think that we have an opportunity to partner with the mayor in this budget. She's created a vacancy strike force that I believe will be helpful to fill over 340 vacant positions. That won't happen right away, but it is being planned to come out for us. There were some other areas that we'd like to see under keeping our community clean and beautiful, because that was one of the key areas that we haven't seen this budget deliver for us dedicated resources for addressing illegal dumping and blight in our community. Of the 40,000 service requests that we received as a city last year, over 50% of those 40,000 service requests came from 2 districts. Our district, District 7, and District 3, West Oakland. And so we have asked for dedicated resources, timely response, proactive response, more education, enforcement, ways that we can eradicate, getting people hired from the community to help address that, and to support having a public works crew that's not just fully staffed, but they've got equipment that's working to come out into the community to get the things that we need picked up. And so that is an area that I am still working with the mayor's office to see where and how we can make that adjustments, because that will be an adjustment that I'm looking to make, and working with our labor partners to see where we can get those adjustments done in the budget so that we can have the type of response that we deserve and the quality of life that we should have out here in deep East Oakland. Under keeping us safe and protected, I'm not gonna go over everything. In the back of the room or when you signed in, you can get a copy of my budget memo. That budget memo was based on feedback from you all. It's feedback on areas that we did not see fully realized in the first 2 years of being in office in that biennial budget. We may not have seen come fully together for us in the mid-cycle budget, which the mid-cycle budget, which Bradley spoke to, is that this 2-year budget is the big budget. Then there's what he called the baby budget. Well, the baby budget is opportunity. If there's some surplus funds, if we had some salary savings, if there were some additional funds that we came down. Now, the first 2 years we had the rescue funds, $189 million from the government. It helped to rescue us when we were faced with a significant budget of $150 million in the first 2 years. It rescued us. It didn't save us. It rescued us for that period of time. And so now we've got to figure out where do we get some of those funds to replenish us back into that area. And so we're looking to see how this budget can deliver. But under public safety, there are some areas of concern for us. We heard it from our business community today as we meet with our owner and operators. Can our business folks raise their hand back there? We had some owner and operators meet with us earlier. They are out in a part of our district in the Hagenberger corridor, the airport corridor, that the rise of crime, burglary, robberies that are taking place there are beyond what I'd like to speak to and not give you the hopelessness that I know that our businesses are really impacted, experiencing in that part of the city and in other parts of our business corridors. And so this budget impacts some overtime, burglary suppression, violence crime operation center support. It may impact some areas of sideshow enforcement. All of those areas are supporting us in public safety and community safety and overtime. That is not available in this budget. And so we've got to figure out how do we ensure that those areas that have been supportive of us for public safety in the business corridors and out here in the community, in the flatlands and the hills, that we have that support built into this budget. We also saw an impact to the Department of Violence Prevention, DVP. That's where we work in partnership with a lot of our community-based organizations to deal with more than violence intervention, the violence prevention, the healing, the trauma care, the deeper investments into those root causes of violence, and working with a different type of strategy that does not engage the police to help us to deliver more outcomes for safety and peace and healing and restoration in our community. We are looking to reduce nearly $3 million in grants funding over 60 organizations. We've heard from those community-based organizations that it's very impactful when they want to see us triple the number of violence interrupters out on the street, those who are acting as first responders, those who are helping to engage with intimate partner abuse, domestic violence situations, group and gang violence reduction strategies. And so that may be another area that we have to see where we can find the funds that we need to provide that level of community safety support, as well as community safety ambassadors who are not police officers, and those who are part of our macro team, our mobile assistants, community responders of Oakland who respond to nonviolent, non-emergency matters. So there are some public safety priorities that we will be seeking to get your support on as we uplift them to our council members and certainly to the mayor's office right now in this process. I believe that on housing, we have a historic amount of money here. You helped to pass Measure U. We have $350 million that we are looking to invest in housing solutions, acquiring new property, renovating. And so there are 3 hotels that we propose that could be used in District 7 to be a housing solution for the crisis that's before us. And so those business owners or those community-based organizations have uplifted proposals that we would like to see this budget and under this administration prioritize utilizing vacant or underutilized hotel space to bring more of our community members off the street into housing, as well as using our own city land to develop and build up. And we do have some land that's moving forward in that process, particularly around our senior center at Clare and Eads, which is catty-corner to the East Oakland Senior Center, where we're looking to bring some transitional youth housing and some housing for our homeless families. And so so there are some things that I'm seeing that are aligned in the budget that will support that. Those are some 3 areas that I'll call out, but I wanna hear from you. We wanna hear the questions that you have, we wanna hear the input that you have. As I rally myself with other colleagues who are not on the president's budget team, we are looking to see how we can listen to each of our constituent groups tonight. As D4 is meeting tonight, we're meeting tonight, we'll come together to see where we're aligned and where we can collectively, as council members who are not on the budget team, work together to collaborate, to bring forth amendments and adjustments that respond to your priorities and your needs that may not have been included to the measure that we see fit for us. And so we'll start to take questions. Oh, we have some questions here also? Okay. We'll rotate questions that came into us and we'll take questions from the audience. I'll bring you the mic so that we can make sure that as you ask your question that we can capture it on the live stream as well. Do you want to say something? And if you could say your name and say where you live in the neighborhood, we'd appreciate it. And then after we have our budget discussion, we have some friends in the back from eBase, Faith in Action East Bay, Fang, eBase, that will be hoping to get your feedback on this budget discussion as well. Stand and share your name and where you live in the neighborhood.
Hi, my name is Kim Maloney, and I live in Brookfield Village, which is off 98. So, we talked about the homeless and where their potential housing will reach or location. I'm not feeling comfortable with the Coliseum area because it's already loaded with, unhoused people that are living in a hotel. There are no parameters guiding those hotels. And so those people are everywhere and they leave their stuff everywhere. And these are our neighborhoods that hardworking people pay money for these houses and trying to keep the upkeep and at the same time can control the amount of litter that's on the outside. So in bringing another transitional unit to Clara Street in Brookfield Village, we already have that. We have people who have those transitional homes and those people who are in the homes who are supposed to be guided through their daily process and so forth, because most of them have mental illnesses or just something that prevents them from moving forward, like working and things like that. So all I'm saying is that we need to consider what we keep doing to the area we already have in. We keep piling stuff on top of things in the same, really a little circumference area of Brookfield is the base of where all the transitional housing is, where all of the hotels are. We got more hotels in Oakland than just what's right here. We ought to look and spread it. Let's go to Rock Ridge. Let's go to Piedmont. Let's go one over in, what's that place, Joaquin Miller.
Amen.
Okay. So I'm just saying, that's right.
Great feedback, thank you. I will share that at Claire and Eads, we're talking about families. We're talking about a lot of our youth at that site. What we've seen is that the number of youth who are unhoused in Oakland, where they're coming out of foster care, or for whatever situation in their family, they don't have housing stability, need a place to live. We have a youth commission and they asked us to prioritize it. We've got some youth transitional housing that's at Hagenberger. It's a beautiful site. 2 years they can stay there, wraparound services, over 40 churches are a part of that commitment to how we guide them with life coaches, educational support, workforce opportunity. It is a beautiful vision of what I believe that we should be delivering more for our youth. This site at Claire and Eads will be more like apartment homes. This is their home, it's not a transitional home. It's where people who want to live permanently will be able to live and raise their family. And that comment that is about the overrepresentation of a lot of the types of things that our community has held onto is true. I've had that discussion as a council member about what we take on in our community versus what other community members take on. I don't believe that every safe RV site should be in our district. I don't believe that all of the needed services have to rest in District 7, and I too have asked for there to be equity in where we actually prioritize the use of city land, citywide, to serve all community members. Everyone wants to have a great place to live. When I was on welfare and WIC, I didn't want you to continue to put me in low-income housing in particular parts of the city or community, and so I think that we have to be mindful over those land use decisions that we're making, and so I appreciate that feedback. Mr. Hammond.
Hi, my name is Deborah Williams, and I live in East Oakland on 83rd. I have two concerns. The first one, in light of what this lady spoke about, is there a way to differentiate between locals that are homeless and those that have been brought into the area or bused into the area? Because I think it's unfair for those of us that are taxpayers to pay for other areas' homeless issues. If it's our community, that's one thing. But when you start paying for everybody else's stuff, that's a problem to me.
Yes.
So that's one concern. And then my other concern, actually I want two together. My other concern is when you talk about hiring, I certainly don't want to see anybody laid off. But one of the problems I have with the illegal dumping and the blight and the employees that are tasked to clean that up is that it's not always done. And what I mean by that is I report almost every other week a dumping in my neighborhood. And I've had a couple of times when I've gotten an email response back saying it's been cleared, and it wasn't. And I've seen the truck parked there with the staff smoking something, I'm not sure what. It could be a cigarette, and chatting it up with folks. That's disheartening to me. And then I get an email saying it's been clear, and I drive by there and the crap is still there. So I'm assertive enough to follow up and find a supervisor. But my problem with hiring more people is supervisors need to be more accountable for their staff actually doing the work. So that's one part of that. And then the pothole situation, I just had my insurance pay $10,000 to repair my car because of a pothole. $10,000 because of a pothole off of 85th.
All of this is good feedback. Ms. Deborah, one, I regret that you've had that experience. I can't imagine being faced with a $10,000 expense as a result. I will say that we do have a claims department to file claims to the city. If there is a situation like that, a different department reviews that. But happy to give you that information for any of you. I've had a number of tires of my own blown out, and I have not submitted a claim, but I do encourage you as residents to submit a
Well,
claim.
let me say this, my insurance will follow through, but I have a girlfriend that filed with the city and she was told good luck.
I don't know the details of that, but I encourage you to submit your claim. I meet with department directors, while every department director and employee in the city, except for my lovely staff that I introduced y'all to, they are lovely. They're the only ones in the city that I get to tell what to do. Every department, employee, leader, our amazing workers, they all fall under the leadership of our mayor. Through the city administrator into those department leaders. So it's the mayor, and she has a direct report of our interim chief of police and our newly appointed city administrator as of yesterday, who was just appointed to start in June. And then all of the department directors and employees fall under the city administrator's responsibility. I have the opportunity to meet with any director who will meet with me, and most of them have chosen to meet with me once a month. And so I take the matters that I hear from each of you, anything that's escalated, anything we haven't seen get done yet, anything we're trying to advocate for and get some understanding of timing, when, how, funding, I'll go to them in this budget process to ask them if they support me and where we can find some money together. But I meet with them, and so I will share the feedback that you've given about our employees for that accountability to be there with how we show up, serving and working for you. And I regret that that is what you've experienced.
I'm sure it happens other places as well, but
People are peopling. And there's accountability. There are different metrics of standards of excellence in what we ask of ourselves as leaders and what we ask of our team members. And I know that the department directors will appreciate getting that feedback. When we talk about the county and just who we have in our community, some of the matters that we haven't done a good job of collaborating with the county in the past. When we talk about Kimberly's issue around how we not really allow people to have the service and support, we put people in need in COVID in hotels, in the East corridor. And when we did that, we never advised the business owners that we were bringing hundreds of new people. We didn't tell them about the care center that was opening up to bring transitional neighbors who were formerly incarcerated. We didn't really have those kind of community conversations and bring notice, nor did we prepare our own infrastructure to have improved sidewalks or improved traffic safety signals. And so there have been a number of safety-related incidents and traffic incidents in areas that we did not best collaborate and coordinate nor communicate with you and businesses to know what that improved traffic would look like and what impacts could come that we could better prepare for. And so those are things that we're working to be mindful of, but those are things that you have lived and endured with for far too long. And we're working with our county partners and this new administration to see where we can address and adjust where the previous administration may not have been as responsive as we had hoped to addressing those issues. Yes, sir. Can you pass that? Oh, Araya, are you gonna pass that mic? We'll give this gentleman here, and then we'll have the financial data on that.
Yes. And hi, my name is Gilbert Owens, but my friends call me Sherman. Anyway, temporary housing, that messed me up. It says the housing for the homeless would be temporary. I don't understand that. Then I see that we have $300 million to invest off into the homeless program. Okay, I understand that. But then I see the Coliseum, while a lot of homeless people's there. I have friends, I have family, and y'all all have friends and family that's there somewhere and that I don't want to speak of. And I don't want to look down on them at all. Even if a person comes from Mars, Americans say this is a land of the free. So even if whatever it is, for us to participate in helping the people, helping the homeless. Because if y'all ain't helping the homeless, you ain't doing nothing.
Amen.
But anyway, I have a lot of stuff to talk about, but I'm not going to take up too much of y'all's time. I want y'all to know to keep the budget open and please manage the money in a professional manner because the people need you. The homeless need you. I got family members out there that's homeless. I lost my brother in a park, a homeless park, and it's really irking. And my family is pretty well off all over the world. But anyway, it's nothing to talk about. I'm talking about now.
That's right.
The people. Look around you. You see somebody out there, you know what I'm saying, that's homeless. Don't look down upon them because it could be you. You. It could the script can flip fast. I ran for office, and guess what? I was homeless.
Amen.
I have seen rats crawl over my face. I have did it all. But I chose to change. So you never know who's out there that's homeless could make a big difference for the people.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful we've got members of our community here with us tonight who are our unhoused neighbors in this room that I know. I don't have to identify them, but they are here in this room. And I want to share that the crisis of homelessness, there are over 5,000 people on a given day who are unhoused and unsheltered in our city. And unfortunately, our neighbor here represents the demographic. that nearly 70% of those who are unhoused are Black, and 80% are Black men. And we can talk about the systemic and structural racism and many other things that have led to the impact of not just those who represent the most overrepresented of our unhoused, but also those who are getting displaced the most. The displacement rate at the highest in the city is 40% of our Black Oaklanders have been displaced, have been felt to be pushed out, moved out. And so there's a statewide strategy. I serve on the Black Housing Advisory Task Force statewide. And we're working to get $1.5 billion from a state who's never had an intentional strategy to address those who are most overrepresented in our homeless crisis in the state. And there's $500 million that we're asking specifically to be targeted for the East Bay. And so I'm working to deliver that. We're also working to make sure that we keep our seniors housed. In my budget, you'll see that there's a priority that I put in there for preserving our seniors in their homes, whether they own the home or they're renting a place, that our seniors could live and thrive with dignity and not be forced with the threat of not having a place to live. You'll also see that we've made some investment in teachers' housing, and we're making a deeper investment in that housing and looking to make more with OUSD and available property that they have and that the city has. And so I want you to take a look. We made some deep investments in rental assistance, and I'm also calling for mortgage assistance. When you talk about the unhoused, I didn't know I was unhoused growing up. I just lived 20 to 30 deep in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom. I just house hopped from one family's house to the next. We slept on pallets, we slept on floors. If a family member let us sleep on the couch, we slept on the couch. We tripled up in bunk beds. So the weight of homelessness and that crisis is something that I've lived, it's something that I've endured, and I grew up making sure that we never had to live out on the street because someone always provided. So my heart is to see what we have, what we can use, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a vacant property, whether it's a building, that we can get that equipped to bring people into housing stability, transitional into permanent housing solutions, and keep those of you who have homes housed so that you don't lose your home. Whether you're a small rental property, a mortgage, a homeowner, or someone who's renting like me. I want to make sure that I keep track of who. So Araya, if you could help me make sure who's next, that would be helpful because I see a lot of hands.
How you doing? I'm Dan Smith. I live in Eastmont, but I work at the Resource Center. And I want to say two things. The first thing is, a lot of you guys talk about the homeless situation, cleaning stuff up in your neighborhood. Resource Center is on 94th and International. That's who takes care of that stuff. It's the NEST program and the neighborhood committees. Those are the people that's responsible. We have 2 members in that office in 9400C International that work out of there. And both of them are the ones to take care of this according to what the city is doing. And you guys have neighborhood councils that most people don't even know what that is or who's representing you guys. And we need to use those people, especially for cleanup, is to come in there and clean up. You come to 9400, you write it down, you tell them what's going on, they take that to the meeting, and that's how that deals with for you guys. People she works to help us, but she doesn't work for the city. They work for the city. So if anybody understands the NEST program and what they do, that's who cleans that up. And when they have a problem, those are the people that they go to, and that's the people that take care of that stuff.
Well, what is 311 Oakland? Because that's.
Well, I can speak to that. So
It's something.
so we do have a NEST, and I want to make sure we're talking about the same NEST program. So the city, we actually live in a pilot area in some parts of our district where inter-departments within the city work to make sure that we prioritize how we respond to service requests. Neighborhood Enhanced Service Team, NEST. And so the NEST team goes out. We've got someone from Public Works, we've got someone from Department of Transportation, we've got someone from Code Compliance, we've got somebody from Department of all these departments together look at what's taking place in that part of the community, and collectively they work to prioritize the service requests so that we can see how we're responding to the most impacted areas. Our district has the NEST pilot in it. We have the macro pilot. Like we have fought to get a bunch of pilots in this district, and we're looking to see what are those outcomes. With what we're spending on those pilots, are we getting anything, and where do we need to make adjustments in this next 2 years? I do want to highlight for housing, because that is a critical area. I want you to take a look at the mayor's service impacts. I want you to take a look at our budget memo. But what is going to get delivered in affordable housing is more historic. We're putting $216 million in capital funding. That's going to go into affordable housing, construction and acquisition, rehabilitation projects. We've got 120 million from Measure U. We've got 41 million from the California Housing and Community Development. We've got Home Key Grant. There's a lot of money, but we know that it's a $1 billion issue. And so while we do have some significant funding going in, and we are working to get projects funded in our district and hotels used that are not right now targeted to be funded, we are working to make sure that every parcel of land that we own can be activated to bring people into some level of housing stability, and working with community-based organizations in the county. And it's going to take more coordination with our county partners and our state partners to do that, where we haven't seen that interagency task force under the last administration. It's needed. I grew up watching it when Mayor Elihu Harris was our mayor, and I saw us come together with state leaders, county agencies, community-based, faith-based partners, neighborhood associations, and we've got to bring that level of task force back. We're going to go on to the next question. Thank you, Ben, for sharing about 9400 International. EV Prec is over there, where they also have some components on helping you do co-op housing.
And I just want to say one more thing, is that about the macro program. Because I know I talked to the people, I'm connecting to them, and they're short-staffed, but there needs to be more understanding around them. Most people, I go all over, west, east, whatever, they don't even know what the macro program is, what it does. They don't even know it exists. You know, we need to be able to bring that in, because that helps the community, because everybody's depending on the police, and 911, they don't even know they exist. So that needs to be something that's present.
You're right. How many people know about macro? So macro, we got it to be a pilot last year. It's really just getting some legs and feet on it. And in the budget, we do ask for macro to be fully invested in with the staff, people from the community working to serve us on these nonviolent, non-emergency issues, and to also fund it citywide and 24/7. Right now, they work during a dedicated number of time. And although I used to didn't think that this time period was the time where a lot of things jumped off, where they may start at 6, 7 in the morning, and they may end at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I just got data that shows that some of the most impactful rising patterns of crime are from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so that is a time where we do want our police officers to be available and responding to more critical priority 1 issues, and our macro team to be available to address some things that are not critical, that are not emergency, and that it may be just resourcing that person with some level of support that they need to get to the next agency or community-based or faith-based organization or city service. Mrs. West is standing back there, and I'll go.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening.
Can you speak up in your mic, Mrs. West?
Is this better?
Yes.
I said, thank you for allowing me to speak and address the budget this evening. First of all, I hope you are able to get everything that we desire to have for our area, especially 31YZ. I am neighborhood council chairperson for our area, 31YZ. I cover Brookfield Village, Sagranti Park, Columbia Garden, and South Amherst. I do reach out to my communities. I did a drive-through yesterday. I was very, very disheartened when I was able to just do 3 or 4 blocks. Mrs. Deloney, yes, you are correct. To see on Walter and Louisiana, Clara Street, Nevada, I think I counted over probably 50 unhoused people. Maybe Northern, I can continue on counting. Unhoused people. This is the middle of the daytime. RVs, then the illegal dumping, not counting people having a unlicensed businesses, and those that doing the illegal practices. And then I'm looking at my business owners being impacted, where their constituents want to go in there to even try to do what they need to do for their business. It was so disheartening. And then to hear that the budget may not allow for more officers. Then I hear that you're gonna bring more unhoused, buildings on Clara Street, when I have a Head Start, then a library, then a senior center, and then I have a park, which is being utilized for, with a shop, car dealer, where they taking cars apart.
Chop shop?
Yes, and then I have men's exposing themselves in the park, where they are doing prostitution in the park. Then on 85th, where DMV, I spoke to the manager there, people trying to get license or whatever, they get their cars broken into. The encampment in the unhoused has taken both sidewalks. A 2-lane is a 1-way. So we at Brookfield, Sabrati Park, we can't take anymore. I have Citizen app. It's bing, 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 bing. Every 5 minutes. I know our officers, they can't get to all the different things. And now I'm hearing about our young women are being snatched off the going to school. They can't go to the bus stops. Hey, someone really needs to take a big look at this budget. Because our district, you need all the support that you can get to keep us safe. And the unhoused, I get the unhoused. I was unhoused with money in the bank, with insurance, and when I went to some of these hotels and they told me, oh, we can't take your kinds, I know about being unhoused. And I know what unhoused look like. So, yeah, we get it, but being unhoused. But we're not looking at unhoused people. We're looking at crime. We're looking at people watching us leave, breaking in our homes. So people stop trying to make us feel guilty.
Right.
When we know we're being victims.
That's right.
So come on, give us a break, and we all gotta work together to get all this crap together. That's all I gotta say about this.
Everybody get to know Mrs. West. We're at least 3 meetings a week, and I just appreciate her leadership because what she experiences, the trauma and terror that too many of us are living around, whether you're afraid to come out your house or you're afraid in your house, that the issues are real. I want to get back to, I was about to call you mom, Miss Deborah. I was asking Haley if she could check because I want to say that based on the county's point in time, that the majority of those that we are serving who are unhoused here are Oaklanders who are no longer housed and have the ability to live here and pay to afford here. There are some programs that may bring folks here. Maybe they come home from being incarcerated and they choose Oakland to be that place to get connected with service. There are people that when we have affordable housing developments, most all affordable housing developments have subsidies from the government. When you have a subsidy from the government, you don't get to say, it can only be Oaklanders, it can only be District 7 residents, it can only be this particular demographic. And so what happens is it's a random selection of community members who apply and qualify and meet that criteria. And so it may mean that someone from Fremont or Newark or Pleasanton, based on that program, comes into Oakland. And it may mean that many of our Oakland residents who are struggling and who are unhoused don't get to stay connected to the community that they've been a part of. And so that is a real challenge that we're facing. And as long as we're getting grants right now through how that system is set up, we're not able to ensure that all Oaklanders get to stay in Oakland. We're just looking to get more projects developed so that more of our community members can be housed. The issues, I mean, I don't know where to start with all the issues that Mrs. West highlight. We meet often, I'm on the phone more often with our police department than any other department based on the issues that we're working to see how we can strategize with their resources to address the magnitude of issues. We just had a meeting with our Sheffield Village neighbors, and I know that, who's a part of your neighborhood council here? I know it was mentioned, if you're not a part of your neighborhood council, I encourage you, there are not a lot of hands that went up here, because that's where city staff and city department leaders in my office that were working together on particular projects to address the issues that you're experiencing right in your immediate neighborhood. We have a neighborhood services coordinator, we've got a community resource officer, we've got department leads, and we got neighbors that help to hold us accountable for real action on those items that you give us to work on. And so it does take a lot. We are not resourced adequately. You do deserve more, you do deserve better, and I thank you for demanding more and demanding better with me. You need it, we need it. I live under the weight of all the gunfire that's talked about. I lost my own son to gun violence in 2013, and so the issue of public safety and the trauma that we're enduring, the number of black women that you highlighted, that out of the 1,500 missing persons total in the city, 400 are black women. And so you may have heard that I've joined with Senator Bradford on his Ebony Alert to call more attention to the number of black women and women of color who are kidnapped, attempted to be kidnapped, abducted, our young girls. We had a youth summit last weekend, and to hear the hearts of high school students talking about how they are being targeted, how they are being attempted to get abducted on their way home, how people are taking pictures of them. Those are real issues that we're facing, and that I'm working to address and advocate for every resource that we deserve to address these issues and to give us a community that's safe for us to live in and for our children to grow up in. Michael.
Yeah.
Ms. Delane, that's your hand next? Oh, I'm sorry, you go, Michael, I apologize.
She's going.
And then you.
Okay.
Hello, thank you, council member. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you, Bradley. My name is Carmen Alvarez, and I work with the SABA program. And I think many of the people that are here might be aware of it, so I just want to just share a little bit. I'm part of the SABA program, which is the stores, corner stores in neighborhoods, where we have a program that is called Fresh 5X. One of the stores is Jalisco, which is right on Nevada, and Eats, 98 and Eats, yes, Eats in Nevada. So I know exactly what you're talking about, because I've been out there signing people up since last fall. So Fresh 5X is a program that for every $1 that our residents utilize on their EBT card, they get $5 of credit to buy more fresh fruits and vegetables. So for every $1 spent on fruits and vegetables on their EBT, they get $5 as credit in the Jalisco market. And we chose to start there because the council a couple of years ago told us East Oakland is a food desert. We need to bring healthy food. And I know your priorities does not necessarily allude to that, but I know that in your heart you do want our community in District 7 to have access to healthy food, access to fresh fruit that is not an arm and a leg when you walk to your corner store, especially for our elderly. Yes. Thank you, Ms. West. So I am here today to ask, and I have a couple of people here that want to share a little bit about the program. And this is not that I do not care about everything else that I've been talking about. I appreciate it. I just want to share a little bit about what they want to share with you about the program, if that's okay. They're Spanish speakers, so I'm going to interpret if that's okay.
If you could have one testimony to share for us, is this a District 7 resident also?
Yes,
Yes.
they're both. One of them is a store worker, and the other one is, they're different people. They're different. They'll be short. So I will make it very, very short, I promise. ¿Quiere compartir un poquito sobre cómo le ha ayudado este programa? ¿Cuál es su nombre?
Felix Pablo.
Félix Pablo. Martina Pablo. ¿Cómo le ha ayudado este programa? ¿En qué forma le ha ayudado? So it has helped me to buy more fruit and vegetables. El dinero extra que tiene, que le beneficia. So I'm able to use the remainder EBT funds to be able to have more access to other proteins, etc., because now I have more money for fresh fruits and vegetables. ¿Algo más que quiera agregar? they live right across the street, so it's very easy for them to come across the street and buy this. Ana, you want that? ¿Quieres presentarte?
Sí. Hola, buenas tardes, mi nombre es Treva. Yo
Good afternoon, my name is Ana.
I'm working in the store and I see the opportunity how the people shop more vegetables because the rest of the money we use for, I don't know, for you know, ¿cómo se dice jabón?
So,
Jabón, ropa, for other, otras cosas de la
other
tienda.
necessities?
Yeah, he can shop in other things in the store and that money used only for the vegetables. I seen the families taking more that food and it's better, so I like it. When I started working 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, so I see the difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to share that it's a program that City Council has supported. I actually launched with Alameda County's Nutrition Department of Health this program in a number of our stores, making sure that we've got fresh fruits and vegetables. And in the budget, it actually prioritizes some of that food support out of our East Oakland Senior Center so that our seniors and our community members who go there weekly on Wednesdays, if you need fresh foods, fruits, produce, we meet there Wednesday. If you're a senior, we meet in there this month. We'll give you the date in the back. I meet with my seniors once a month at that location, and we serve community members and seniors fresh fruit and produce in partnership also with Alameda County Food Bank, where we're asking this budget that we make sure that we not only give food, but we give proteins for our family members to have some meat with their potatoes and their fruits and their vegetables. So I want to thank you for coming, and we're going to let the other community
And
members.
we have been at the Brookfield Senior Center. We've
Yep.
actually had events, focus groups, where we have invited members to sign up. Many of the seniors who have DBT are participants of the program. So what we're asking is to continue with the funding for $1 million for the next 2 cycles, so that, or we can expand this program to other corner stores and make it accessible so that our Oakland residents can have access to fresh fruit and vegetables around the corner.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And there is an event on June 3rd out of that same fund, Measure HH, at Sunnyside Park, Bertie's Carter Park at 98th and Bancroft. We're doing an Oakland Drinks Water campaign, so we encourage you to come out. Mr. Fab will be there as our MC. So it's a big community fun, health fair, health event with a lot of fresh foods, produce, health services for our community. Michael, and then Ms. Cunningham.
Hi, I'm Michael. I live in the Sequoia neighborhood. Thank you, Treva and Bradley, for your presentation. I think it was very helpful. So I worked in behavioral health with homeless and adults with serious mental health issues. I'm retired. And one of the things that I'm always concerned about is how to access resources. So a lot of resources were mentioned, the NEST program. How does someone find out if they're in a NEST neighborhood? How does someone find out if a rental subsidy is available? If I were a case manager still working within the city of Oakland, how would I find out about these resources?
Great question. When you all came in, you signed up for the District 7 newsletter. Is anyone not receiving our newsletter? Okay, so that's one way that we can make sure that we get more information out. About the NEST, because the NEST is certain beat areas, police beat areas, we've communicated with those police beat areas that we have the neighborhood enhanced service team out there. We've actually gone out canvassing door to door, handing out bags, walking the blocks, walking to community members to let them know this is what we have, this is how we want you to report. We encourage everyone to utilize 0311. For the rent assistant programs, we do typically put in our newsletter under Keep Oakland Housed a section on how to stay abreast of the rental assistance programs. There's a rental registry that's coming that I think might be more helpful to you that hasn't launched yet. It got a little bit delayed as we work to balance our rent moratorium with feedback from renters and property owners and small property owners. So we'll have more access to you getting some of that information with some new tools that are coming out through the rental registry.
Or if I had a homeless person that I was working with, access to housing resources kind of thing.
Yes, we will get you plugged into the right department at the city or the right county partner at the city for us to make sure that we get you connected to helping to serve that unhoused person or being that provider for that support. And thank you for that.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say to everyone that every human being has a right to be housed, regardless who they are.
Amen.
Because right now we got too many seniors, even the veterans out there, housed, unhoused. And it's a disgrace to the whole communities around Oakland. And we need ambassadors to walk up and down every part of Oakland, east, west, south, north. They have right now going on, the ambassadors are right now in Chinatown. Why not in this area? And the crime here is much higher. So we're gonna have to band together to make changes in Oakland. Because frankly speaking, it's too much crime going on. The seniors don't even go out, not even in the daytime. And that's not right. We're being hostage. And I feel it's just, we're gonna have to work together. Now right now, we got what? About 100 or so people here? It's ridiculous. We need to have everybody out here protesting. That's the only way we get something done. We just can't sit down. We have to voice our opinions and let the mayor know what is happening in our community. There's no such thing as keeping our mouths closed. A closed mouth does not get fed. So we're going to just have to work together. And we have our councilman, Mrs. Treva Reid, here in District 7. And we're going to have to work with her to get things done. Because she cannot do it by herself. And you heard what she was saying about all these different departments she's trying to get to work with her. And we as a community are going to have to work with her as well. Because there's a lot of resources out there. And some resources she probably may not even know about. But if you know of some resource to help our community, let her know. So we can tap in it like the rest of the people. So all I'm going to say to you guys, I'm going to stop preaching. I'm going to put myself down. All I want to say to you all is let's work together in unity. Where there's unity, there's strength. That's the only way we're going to make it in this world.
It's so beautiful. This is our community gym. I love Ms. Cunningham shows up everywhere. She advocates for us at the county level for senior services and program and funding. She advocates for us here in our district and at City Hall. She shared something that's really important. This room is full of amazing neighbors, and I love that you're here listening to people from different parts of our neighborhood. You may not always hear the different things that are going on from Brookfield to Sobrani to Sheffield Village, which is this hidden jewel tucked away here in District 7, not far from where we are now, or those up in the hills and those in the flatlands, and I think it's so important that we do come together. That's right. We have got to show up like this at council meetings. The decisions are made to cast 5 votes. I serve over 63,000 neighbors, and I can tell you that Mrs. West was the only person who weighed into the mayor's presentation on May 3rd. And so there may have been some, I know Bill was listening, I know some people were listening, but I want to tell you that the power of your voice drives votes, because other community members and neighbors all over the city, they show up in the process. They show up, and activists show up who don't even live here, and who often make policy recommendations that don't deliver for us and may not serve your best interests. Every issue that's come up here, you've seen the deficit, you know the opportunities that are before us, you can see the challenges. I need you with me on May 30th at our full council budget presentation to Zoom in or come into City Council. Thank you for being here tonight. This is important. And then that process until June 30th, you'll need to weigh in. It can feel like the Hunger Games fighting for you, trying to get what you need. And while it felt like that in the first 2 years, we came out with what we needed more of. It wasn't easy, but we came out with more of what we needed. In the mid-cycle, we got more. And I believe that even as stretched as we are, we can make sure that District 7 is not forgotten, that we're at the forefront of the decisions that are being made with our council colleagues in this administration. Okay, I also have Ms. Delane that I had committed, so Sean.
Yep. Hey everyone, my name is Sean Everhart. I live in Sheffield Village. One of the things, obviously Bradley, I know you mentioned the whole ransomware attack. Just from hearing things, the illegal dumping, the homeless, the crime, it seems like it's a disparate component of the data. Like there are, for example, when Captain Johnson was there and said you only had 2 crimes in Sheffield Village, in 6 months, I was kind of blown away because I had 20-something of them in my inbox. And I mentioned that because obviously Sheffield's a little area, but what about like the everything off 98th, everything off 73rd, everything over there. So you're asking for additional funds. I know that you had mentioned that there's different earmarks for budgets. How are we managing that? If we don't ask and have that data that's correct, how are we gonna, the state data, the county data? It's just, I'd love to know, Bradley, your thoughts on how you take those into account, because it seems like making decisions, doing funding on bad data isn't the best use of everyone's time and money.
Do we have the accurate data with this ransomware attack?
Because a lot of times you get data loss when you have a ransomware attack. And if you don't know, that's fine, we could always take it off, but.
I would say 2 things. Government is not the best at data collectors. That would be a starting point. But what's as important as collecting data and collecting it routinely is ensuring you're collecting the right data and asking the right questions in the process of data analysis. So I know one of the things that Councilman Reid and lots of other councilors are pushing on is not just to do programs, but to do evaluation of them. It's often about making sure that we get the right data points in to make sure that we're connecting through that. It is a major effort to sort of transform how that operates within government. We're taking baby steps, I would say, in the cycle. The major things I would say related to the IT investment are about ensuring the data is secure. One last thing we want to have happen, and it's not something that happened in the security breach, but it could have, is that we could have had a breach where everyone that had paid a parking citation in the city of Oakland had their credit card compromised. That's a possibility that we've seen that happen in other systems. The $10 million investment is primarily to ensure that we don't ever get there. And that's what that is about. Happy to take offline with you more about data collection.
And we'll be there, we'll be wrapping up. We have someone who'd like to share about a program that was in the budget or that was a ballot measure. We have our sister here who leads a lot of coalition support for a number of priorities. And then I just want to review 2 questions. I'm not sure, Bradley, if you saw the 2 that came into us so that we can make sure that the voice of those who wrote us in can have their question answered live as it may be listed into. So, Liana, you want to go first?
Thank you, Councilmember Reid, and hi, D7 neighbors. My name is Liana Molina. I live on 104th Avenue, and I work with the Oakland People's Budget Coalition. I see a number of our partners here in the room: Oakland Rising, Street Level Health Project, SMU 10 to 1, eBase, and others. And we're a labor community coalition that really wants to support our vital public services and make sure that we have the appropriate staffing that can carry out those services. I wanted to voice support around the mayor's proposed vacancy strike force in order to help, again, staff up key city departments like Human Resources, Public Works, Department of Transportation, Department of Human Services. And then relative to housing, our community and housing development, or housing and community development department, and really expediting the projects so that we can get more housing built, particularly to get folks off the street. And I don't know if I'm not to get too wonky, but there's particular regional goals that we're supposed to meet, particular to low income, extreme low income, moderate, and so forth, to make sure that we get those units built as quickly as we can. And so that would be the staffing to help expedite that. The other thing I wanted to voice support for is homelessness intervention sites, both in our district and around the city. We're facing a crisis. We need a lot of help to get folks off the streets, including that transitional housing, and of course people have talked about permanent. I wanted to state support for sanitation services at the existing encampments to help remove litter and give people basic amenities like a place to use the restroom, clean water. And then just voice support for the hotel acquisition, both in District 7 as well as other opportunities. I wanted to ask a question of Bradley. I had heard that the Lake Merritt Lodge was not in the budget, and so that's not obviously not in D7, it's in D2. Some people have voiced a desire for these sites everywhere, so if you could address that question, and I'm just gonna make a couple more points around public safety, our support around macro, the Department of Violence Prevention, and ambassadors. I was wondering if you could speak briefly to service cuts, because I had heard at some point that the mayor had asked all departments to cut across the board. I heard about the brownout and the delayed thing of the fire engine, but if there's more to say on the service cuts. I had a question about the increase to the OPD budget. There's a lot of concerns that police don't actually prevent crime, they just respond to it after it happens. So how are we, maximizing our resources in that department and really getting PD to focus on violent crime? So I just wanted to close to say that we support this concept of civilianizing again, so that sworn officers are focusing on violent crime and not other issues. So thank you so much for your public service and for everyone's participation.
I'm gonna actually have Mr. Lane go next. I forgot. So we're gonna have Brad answer as much of that as he can. I can speak to some of it. We'll have Mr. Lane. I forgot we had a question from her, and then we'll have you speak about it.
So in rapid fire, Lake Merritt Lodge was in the budget, $10 million. It's the largest single homelessness investment as a single line item in the budget in the general purpose fund. It's there. Yes, you'll see service reductions in a lot of those spaces. I noted here the service impacts page, that's where you'll find those on an individual basis. Related to PD, most of the increase, and this is an important thing to know, most departments, because of inflation, if you hold services constant, the cost goes up year to year. That's a thing to note. Most of what you're seeing happening with PD and a lot of the other departments, even if you see the number go up, is simply it's the same service level. It could even be a lower service level with an increase. It's pretty common to see, and that's simply the effects of inflation on city resources. It affects everything. I think I covered the key spaces. The key place to look for your service impacts, again, is that page that Councilman Reid clearly noted for us.
Thank you, and I'll just add for, you mentioned macro. Macro is supported in the mayor's budget with expanding macro. We got $10 million from the state to help us fund macro in the last 2 years. There's some additional grants that we have coming down from the state to help offset some of the budget deficit for Department of Violence Prevention and some macro funding. I wanted to just speak to the community safety ambassadors that Ms. Cunningham spoke about. I asked for $1 million for community safety ambassadors. So people who are not police officers, people who are from the community that help look out for the community, watch over the community, show up in the community. And we had $40,000 for a holiday grant that I advocated for our business corridor areas, International, Hagenberger, 98, Foothill Square, MacArthur. We were able to get that funding from December to March, where that funding was able to be sustained. We no longer have community safety ambassadors that we partner with in Black Cultural Zone to help show up in our community, and I'm asking for us to have that funding where we may have other alternatives to how we show up with community safety while our police department are stretched. I wanted to say that while the budget for our sworn officers right now, we're at 710 positions. That's 16 fewer than what we budgeted in the last 2 years. That does not include the 93 frozen officers in this budget. And the mayor anticipates that this time next year we'll have 734. So there are community members who may be delighted in that number, and there are a number of community members I know who are greatly challenged by that number because of the lack of responsiveness that we're getting at this time in police and community safety while we build out macro and while we look to address the DVP deficit of serving in this budget under the Department of Violence Prevention. With the reduction to DVP, the Department of Violence Prevention, it looks like we will be serving perhaps 2,000 fewer people, individuals that we're serving now. And so we serve right now 11,500 people through that funding. They asked for $40 million in the first 2 years. We gave a historic amount of $18 million. So there's been a gap with the DVP, and so we're looking to see how we can replenish and not reduce that funding to really serve more of the families that need it and more of the individuals who are impacted by violence, who are at risk or at the center of gun crime. Mr. Lane.
Hi. Oh, it's been on? Okay.
I'm Delaney Thompson. I do live in the Grass Valley District. And I've also been a person who's been homeless. I had 2 daughters after divorce. And fortunately, I slept on my sister's couch for a few months because I didn't get a job. So, but anyway, so I've had the same experience, a similar experience, because it's been, took me about 40 years to get on my feet and to be able to have a home and be, a community, a part of this community is what I'm saying. But my concern and my neighbor's concern is Oakland is a sanctuary city. And I believe that's part of the main problem we're having, because it's misunderstood. They don't have it's not clear. It's not made clear what sanctuary city is about. It's ambiguous. If you read it, I read it. It's ambiguous. I think it'd be good if we can clarify that, get it in public, to let people understand what the sanctuary means, what we're doing, what we're about, why we have this service. And I also want to know, and my neighbor as well, is how long does this sanctuary city remain? Is that a temporary thing or is that a permanent thing?
That's a good question.
I will have to pull up the ordinance for you, Ms. Delaney, to answer by the book as to what the ordinance is, but we are a safe city. We don't partner with the FBI and other federal agencies to, with our support for those who are coming undocumented into our city. And I want to give you perspective on our district. Our district is 63,000 plus neighbors. We are now the largest district of Latino community members. And a number of our community members are undocumented, and we are working to ensure that our community members here are protected. We're 50 plus, 53% Latino, 35%, I believe, Black, are the largest demographics of our population. And so we are a sanctuary city for a number of different things, but if you're speaking about those that we're working to protect through immigration and through deportation and the issues that we're addressing at the federal level here locally.
That's the reason we have such large, not because of the undocumented people. Don't misunderstand me. I don't want to start a unnecessary issue. I'm saying that the criminals coming here, they run to the city because they misunderstand, because it's misunderstood out here what sanctuary city is. They can do a crime and run here with it.
Well, that's a whole different issue. Now, we will tell you that OPD will tell you that a lot of the crime patterns that we're seeing rise in our city are coming from people who know that there appears to be a lack of accountability, that this appears to be a city that we're not watching, we're not looking, we're not safeguarding, we don't have enforcement measures in place, we don't have enough resources to address the community safety for non-emergency, for emergency, for violent crime. And we also, as we heard shared recently from our community safety leads, is that a number of laws have changed that certainly have favored criminals that California voters put forward, where there are changes in what classifies you as a misdemeanor or felony. So where it used to be, if you got a felony for anything over 1,000, well now that's anything over, I believe, 10,000. And so there are a number of crimes that are being taken place because individuals know that, one, by law, they won't be classified as a felony versus a misdemeanor. There are also some changes in juvenile laws where our juveniles are not, being held accountable for a lot of the crime patterns that they are now participating in, that adults are encouraging or engaging with our juveniles for our juveniles to get caught doing things where they won't go to jail, they won't be held accountable. And so we're seeing those patterns of behavioral issues and crime rise in those demographics and people coming into the city where they believe that they can terrorize us. And so we are taking more steps with public safety to ensure that they don't get the message that Oakland doesn't have resources, that we don't have enough officers, that we're not looking, that we're not watching. I've advocated for public safety cameras that are coming out into our business corridors. I'm certainly a strong advocate for public safety and alternatives to public safety and investment into DVP, doubling that investment, doubling our investment into public school safety initiatives. We put $2.4 million in there. Our schools need more of that. Our gender-based violence programs, our safe spaces, our mental health care clinic, all of those wraparound services, getting to the deep root issues of public safety, they need that help. My first resolution as a council member, I declared gun violence a public health crisis. It wasn't just a declaration, it led us to make a deeper investment as a city into $18 million, but it also called on our county to deliver their $300 million that they received from the federal government to rescue them more equitably into culturally responsive mental health care services, deeper investments into violence prevention, intervention, and healing and trauma care, housing people, workforce training programs, life coaches, feeding people, putting $50 million into food security, $50 million into mental health behavior. So it's a holistic approach that we've got to take, but know that by no means do I believe that this is the place that you can come and terrorize us. I want that message to be clear. We are not having it. I will not tolerate it. And whatever I have to do to counter it, to invest in it, to advocate for it, I'm all in for it. I'm not afraid.